You're locked into the Liberty Flames podcast, powered by Rogers Heating and Cooling, servicing Greater Lynchburg's HVAC and electrical needs. Schedule your service today at callrogers.com. Get ready for double coverage with Nick Pierce and Pat Kelly, the weekly podcast that takes you inside Flames football and around the nation before game day. Now, alongside former Flames All-Conference wide receiver Pat Kelly, here's your host, Nick Pierce.
What's up, Flames Nation? Welcome back into the podcast. Time to talk some Flames football here this week as we enter into the home stretch. Already in the home stretch for Flames football here. Liberty on the road the next 2 weeks. And a lot on the line here for this Flames football team. I'm Nick Pierce. He's Pat Kelly. Glad you are along here for the ride as always. This is double coverage on the Liberty Flames podcast, powered by Rogers Heating and Cooling. And we will chop up everything here today from disappointing week. Flames lose at home to Missouri State, 21-17, the final score. Game that I'm not sure that the shock has quite worn off yet for myself or for anyone else. Flames had the lead there in the last minute, led into the third quarter. Game gets away. We'll talk about some of the particulars from that in just a minute, and then we're going to move on. And we'll look ahead to what's next for this team, and still a whole lot to play for. Like I said, Flames trying to go to a bowl game here for a seventh straight year. So much to talk about, Pat, but before we get into that, I ask you, how are you, sir? How are you enduring the cold weather here in Virginia right now?
I'm good. The first thing I was going to say is I'm jealous of you this week because I will be staying in cold Virginia. You will be going down to Miami.
I was about to say, believe it or not, regardless of what happened, I'm in a good mood today.
It's hard not to be. You're going to
because I'm going to Miami.
Yeah, you're going to 70-degree weather. Jealous of that. I walked outside yesterday morning after fighting with my daughter, insisting that she put a jacket on because it was in the 30s, to which she told me, I'll put my jacket on at school. And I said, I don't want to hear it. If we walk outside and you're cold, do not tell me, Daddy, I'm cold. I need a jacket. And we weren't 7 steps outside. And she looked at me and said, Daddy, I'm cold. I need a jacket.
You let them learn the hard way, you know? Sometimes that's just the way that it has to be. You know, mine's not quite old enough yet to really detect being cold. He just runs around in circles and creates his own body warmth, I think. 2 years old, you don't really notice that stuff. But
Snot
we do
running down the face and everything.
Yeah, exactly. It's whatever at that point. But, you know, I've tried to get in the habit of starting the car before we get out there, you know, get a little warm air going in there so he's not out in it but so long. But typically he's more concerned with trying to slap the bushes outside of our front porch, or stray cat or something catches his attention. Who knows? But
Grayson is asserting his dominance, okay?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, push those bushes back. No, it's going to be great. You know, getting down to South Beach, or it's not technically South Beach. It is Miami proper, is where FIU is located. I don't know if how many of our folks have been there before. Going to Pitbull Stadium. Talk more about that a little bit later on, as the Flames will take on the Panthers here in a pivotal Conference USA game. Liberty 4-5, FIU 4-5. Both these teams trying to make a run at getting to a bowl. Liberty's been to 6 straight bowl games. FIU, under a new head coach and Willie Simmons, trying to get to a bowl game for the first time since 2019. We'll talk about the particulars of that game coming up here in just a bit, but just kind of revisiting some of this past Saturday again. Just shocking the way that game went down. The Flames came out, opening drive, scored a touchdown, looked like that they were on their way, coming off that 59-point performance from the week prior. I don't know, man. I haven't been around too many teams that have been this inconsistent from one week to the next. It just feels like you're not sure what you're going to get. I think the frustrating part for me is just you see what's in there. You see the capability, the potential. But we got 3 games left in the season. If you don't start tapping into that potential on a more consistent basis, you're going to run out of time here, and that's what we're kind of waiting on this team to do. I guess just biggest takeaways from that Missouri State game. What did you learn about this Flames team, if anything new?
Well, I started really hopeful because it was the second week in a row that you started your opening possession with a touchdown. The week before, I think, was 10 plays, 75 yards for a touchdown. this past Saturday against Missouri State, I think it was 7 plays for 75 yards and a touchdown. So I'm thinking, hey, offense is rounding a corner. They put up 59 last week. First drive of the game, things were looking good. Um, and then they kind of just fizzled. You opened with the touchdown, and then you had 3 straight drives with a punt. Then you kicked a field goal before half. And then going into the third quarter, I think every possession of the third quarter resulted in a punt. So
It did. Yeah.
um,
Total of 15 plays and 3 drives and 3 punts for the third quarter for the Flames.
yeah, I think my take a positive takeaway is that the running game, you've seemingly found your guy. Dickens continued kind of his just hot streak that he's on right now. Offensive line seemingly was blocking things up pretty well. He was able to make guys miss. First half was excellent, offensively and defensively. You outgained them 253 to 84. You averaged 6 yards of play. I mean, that is a winning formula right there. Second half, you averaged around 3 yards of play, so you didn't quite get it done there. That was frustrating. My takeaway, a team that has historically had that kind of Flames quarter, you're able to finish the game strong, wasn't able to slam the door shut. The seasons past, the fourth quarter's really been one of their strongest quarters, both defensively and in terms of putting up points on the board, and just weren't able to do it on Saturday. So, my takeaway there is, when you're in man coverage, you either got to get home or you got to be in sticky coverage, and neither one of which happened, especially on that 13-yard touchdown to kind of seal the game for Missouri State. You threw a fade ball on the outside. You had your one-on-one matchup. You brought 5. You had a high safety, but he wasn't getting over to cover that. So certainly a frustrating loss, but I think certainly some things to keep building on. I mean, I think they've found their guy. Keep feeding Dickens the rock. But yeah, pretty big bummer from that one.
That was the first time that Liberty had lost a game when leading after 3 quarters since Jamie Chadwell took over. Flames are now 18-1 when leading after 3 quarters under Coach Chadwell. I believe that's the first time that he has lost a game that he's coached when leading after 3 quarters. You got to go back to Coastal Carolina. I want to say it was the game at Arkansas where they ended up losing by 1 point. Not 100% on that. I'd have to double check it. But that would have been 7-8 years ago. I mean, like you said, that fourth quarter has typically been winning time for the Flames, and it just wasn't this past weekend. That said, you referenced the defense. I thought the defense, take away the last touchdown drive, as difficult as that is, I thought the defense put together an entire game that was worthy of winning. When you look at what this team did statistically, giving up just 21 points, giving up 332 yards. Flames outgained them by, almost 70 yards in that game. You gave up just 46 rushing yards. I mean, how many times is stopping the run, right? That's always what defensive coordinators talk about. Stop the run, get off the field on third down. 4 of 11 on third down. That's not great for Missouri State. You got to the quarterback. You got 4 sacks. I mean, those are winning type of formulas. And I think at the end of it, again, that 4-play, 70-yard drive notwithstanding, defense did a lot of things, almost everything that they needed to win the football game. You can't pin it solely on them. Yeah, I get it. When it's on the line, you got to get a stop. You got to get a stop. But the offense had chances to get a first down before that, and they weren't able to convert on it. Couple drops from some receivers this past weekend, but your quarterback was not at an elite level either. And that's the thing, coming off his best game of the year against Delaware. You could argue in some ways this might have been his worst game. An interception, some balls that were thrown to the other team that were dropped, only 196 yards passing, 51% completion percentage. I think, and in fairness, from what I saw, the pass blocking grades were not very good for Liberty's offensive line either. Credit Missouri State's D-line, I think, on some of that. I think there's a number of things. I mean, you can't score 7 points on your first drive and then score 10 points for the rest of the game. And to me, that's kind of what it came down to.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. You're up, what was it, 10-0 at halftime. And then they come out and they rattle off 21 points. Missouri State does in the second half. But you mentioned kind of pieces of a winning formula. I'm looking at some of the numbers. Liberty was 50% on third down. I mean, if you told me they were 50% on third down, they had almost 400 yards of offense, I'd say, yeah, sign me up for that. They're certainly coming out of this game with a win. Um, I
Three for
actually
three in the red zone. I mean, that's another offensively that you check.
exactly. You said something though that it jogged my memory. I sent out a tweet the other day, kind of just doing some post game recap, and when the game was on the line, when you had a chance to go with your 4-minute offense to win the game, you had two separate third and three opportunities to ice the game, one of which was at midfield and you fumbled the snap. And then the next one, after just a bizarre play where you track the guy down, you get a fumble, Vasco recovers in the end zone, you get the ball back. You've got a minute and a half left in the game. Another third and three, you're unable to convert. I mean, that to me is kind of that's inexcusable for a team that is so run heavy and so good in terms of rushing the football. That was a heck of a way to kind of lose that game.
Talked about Vasco, and we had Reeve Smith in the press room this week. Steady hands, really like that kid. He's fought through injuries. He's done a lot of great things to be on the field. Ended up having 4 catches, first game in a while that he's had multiple receptions. And I asked him, I said, when everything's not going right for your quarterback, what can you do as a receiver to help him? And it was kind of a simple answer, but I got it. It was get open and catch the ball. I mean, it's that's if the quarterback sees you making plays for him, he's going to have more confidence to keep throwing you the ball. But then also make the first play of the drive. Start to get a little bit of feel good. The first catch, the second catch. That's why a lot of times you'll see teams quick pass, quick throw, just get into a rhythm right away. And as a receiver, see that thing into your hands, turn upfield, get some positive yardage, and then you just start to create a mentality. And I just don't feel like the Flames were able to do that this past weekend like they were in the game against Delaware. So I don't know. I see you nodding your head yes. I mean, as a receiver, you've probably been there when everything's not going the quarterback's way. Maybe he doesn't have his fastball that day, so to speak. What were some things that you tried to do?
Well, I'm 100% on board. I'm in lockstep with Reese Smith in terms of, kind of the obvious get open, catch the football. There's a reason why they say you want to win on first down. You want to stay ahead of the chains is the line that people say a lot. It's because your whole playbook opens up when you're in second and short or second and medium versus it's second and 10, second and 12. That puts a whole lot more burden, number one, on the offensive coordinator to get the right call, and number two, on everyone across the board to fully execute. Maybe a not quite as obvious answer about what you do to try and help your quarterback, at least from my perspective, is you come off to the sideline after a drive and you basically sit down and reflect and say, hey, what did you see out there? Like, what did you see on this particular third down? And you guys have a dialogue back and forth. Okay, here's what I saw, from my press corner, or here's what I saw the safety doing. And that's it's a good feedback system where quarterback's kind of telling you what he is seeing. You're able to tell him, well, here's what I saw. And then kind of being in lockstep then with your offensive coordinator, hopping on the phone, hopping on the headset to say, here's what we're seeing. Here's what we felt like was effective. But that's another way to, number one, see kind of how your quarterback is processing things. And if he either did or didn't see something, you're able to kind of communicate on your side of it. Well, here's what I saw. Here's what I did. And that's certainly a way. And then the other thing, and this is going to sound dumb, but the other thing that you can do to help your quarterback is in the run game, blocking. Because as we've talked about, you win on first down, you're in second and third and short.
Well, and especially in this offense.
For sure. And granted, I was not always the best of blockers, but the better that you block, the more physical you are with those DBs, the more it's going to help you as a receiver, and then in turn help your quarterback in terms of delivering passes. So that's kind of my answer. I definitely agree with Reese Smith. Get open, duh. But then also have that dialogue on the sideline. Hey, Ethan, what were you seeing out there? Let's talk about it a little bit.
So let me ask you this, because when you played, I don't know if I might be wrong here, but like when you played, the offense, obviously they're in their section. The quarterback was sitting not too far from the receivers, right? I mean, the quarterback was with the rest of the offense, correct?
Yeah.
I don't feel like that's the case now anymore, not just at Liberty. I think a lot of places, a lot of schools, NFL teams, the quarterback basically sits between the offensive bench and the defensive bench. And they sit over there with the other quarterbacks and one of the quality control or assistant, I don't know what the title is, but one of the people, he's got a tablet and they're watching the video, but what you can do now, which obviously you couldn't do when you guys were playing. So it's a little different. And they're right next to the phone. But I feel like the quarterback now is just so removed from the rest of the team. And I get the analytical side, I get the video side, and you want to go back and look. But I think that there might be something missing there, like what you're talking about. That dialogue has kind of been lost a little bit. And I'm not sure that that's a good thing.
I do think part of it is how quarterbacks are coached now in an RPO or in a spread offense, where it's kind of a here's read one, here's read two, here's read three, tuck it and run. So there's not necessarily, and I can't speak for Liberty, I'm not in the huddle with these guys, but I think there is okay, option one wasn't open, option two wasn't open, here's what I'm doing. So it's less of an opportunity for dialogue and more of a quarterback kind of going through his checklist. And that was one thing, whether it was with Mike Brown or Josh Woodrum or Brian Hudson, being able to have that dialogue of, hey, on that 3rd and 6, when I was in the slot, the backer was flying out to the flat. So I ran my hitch instead of the slant on that option route. Like being able to talk through some of those things, because being able to talk it through versus just a still picture or being able to see something on film, you got to be plugged in with your guys to kind of understand what was going through his head. You talk about, oh, that was a miscommunication by the quarterback and the receiver. That's exactly it right there. And when you can talk those things through, as an example, oh, I geared my route down. I thought you were throwing back shoulder. Quarterback may say, oh, well, you were even with him, so I thought you were running past him. It's an opportunity on the sidelines to fix it in the first quarter so that you've got the second, third, and fourth to make improvements as the game goes on.
Yeah, and just for me, I mean, if you're not communicating it on the sideline or not consistently, then you're going to get what you get in the game. And I'm not just talking about Liberty. I'm talking about everybody, because I see this everywhere now. The quarterback kind of sitting off in his own ivory tower, so to speak.
Hey, Nick,
I
and
don't
the thing
know.
is, there is nothing that prevents the quarterback from pulling his receiving group over if it's a particular passing
Sure.
concept, or the offensive line to say, hey, let's take a look at this play. Like, here's what went wrong. Here's what I was seeing. You can do that. And again,
And I see receivers, they'll duck their head in occasionally, time, but there is communication. I just don't know if there's enough anywhere again. But I'm sure there's an analytics guy or a quarterbacks coach out there that would, bring me and say, no, this is why it's better to do it this way, and that's fine. I don't know, just an observation. So you mentioned Evan Dickens earlier as we talk about some of the bright spots, back-to-back 100-yard games for him now. What makes this guy a dude? Because, I mean, you look at this week, you got Dickens, and you've got FIU's running back as well, Owens. Those guys are, I think, like 2 and 3, 3 and 2, respectively. I think Owens might be second, and then Dickens third in the league in rushing. These are two of the better running backs in the league, is what I'm trying to say. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch them. But what makes Dickens a dude? How has he separated himself?
I think one of the things that he does well is he's a patient runner. People hear that all the time and may not necessarily know what it means, but when a guy takes a handoff, his job isn't to just immediately run as fast as he can. There are times where your offensive line has to get to their linebacker, or has to, whether they're a pulling guard or whether they're working up to the second level to a linebacker. You have to let those things develop. They don't just happen immediately. So I think he's a patient runner in that he takes the handoff and doesn't just immediately sprint. He's able to give it a stutter step or let the play develop a little bit while those blocks are taking hold. And then he's able to either see the hole and hit the hole, or he's able to bounce it if necessary. So that's one thing that I think he does a good job of. It's just he's patient. I also think as a runner, he does a good job of delivering contact. He always falls forward, it seems. A lot of times you'll see a guy gets met in the hole and just gets driven back. It always feels like his feet are moving and he's falling forward. That's probably one of the things that's really impressive to me. And then, we talk about Quentin Cooley a lot from this offense from the past. I think one thing that maybe separates Dickens is the fact that, yes, he can run between the tackles like Quentin Cooley was known for and did a great job of. But Quentin wasn't necessarily going to catch a pitch or wasn't going to hit the edge like a Juju Gray or an Aaron Bedgood. I think a part of Dickens' game is that Yes, he can run between the tackles, but he can also beat you on the edge and take 175 yards for a touchdown. So he can deliver the boom, but he can also be your home run threat. I think that's a lethal combination. And probably all those things combined is why he is as effective as he is.
Yeah, a versatile back. That's for sure. He's on pace for 1,000 yards, and that's one thing we talked about coming into the season. He's already over 700 yards rushing. We talked about coming into the season. Was Liberty going to have 1,000-yard rusher? And I didn't really think they would. And had not been for Dickens, really these last few weeks. And if if he doesn't miss a game with a concussion, he might have already been closer to or right at 1,000 yards as it is. He's kind of emerged as that guy. But missing Juju Gray, like you said, that takes some of the depth out of there. We're going to see a little more Jalen Belford here probably this week. They're going to have to go ahead and spend his red shirt at this point with the injury to Gray, and just really not as much depth probably in the room after Dickens. But make no mistake, these last three games, Evan Dickens is going to get his share of the touches, and he should. When you look at what's on the line here in this game coming up as we kind of flip the page now to FIU, we've already talked about it. I mean, you're looking at bowl eligibility. The Conference USA title game hopes are not fully extinguished, but man, you need a lot of help, and you've got to help yourself too. I mean, as it is, you got 3 games to go. You're 2 games back of the leaders, Kennesaw State and Jacksonville State, also with a loss to Jacksonville State. Now, you only have to pass or catch one of those 2 teams. I understand that. So you got Kennesaw State and Jacksonville State playing one another this weekend. That's going to give one of those 2 teams a loss. One of the teams in front of you, Missouri State, is not eligible to play in the Conference USA Championship game. So regardless of their win over Liberty, kudos to them. They're 4-1 in the league. It means absolutely nothing in terms of postseason. I did hear this week they are going to file the traditional waiver with the NCAA, which pretty much every reclassifying school does now, and they're going to try to get themselves into a bowl game. Godspeed, best of luck, 6-3 record. We'll see how it turns out. I do think, just as an aside here, Pat, that's probably a rule that needs to go ahead and be changed. It's antiquated. It used to cost $5,000 to move up from FCS to FBS. I think that's at $5 million now. And so the commitment is there. It used to be that there was a fear that, oh, school's going to jump up and on a really good year, and then they'll just drop back when they have a down year, and they're going to kind of waffle. And they didn't want that instability, which I understand. It's not the case now. If you're putting up $5 million, you're in this thing for the long haul. Teams are building stadiums. They're making big-time plans and commitments to doing this. So I'm not sure that the rule really applies anymore. Now, I will say, in season, I'm not really a fan of waivers and changing and moving the goalpost. It needs to be something that's done in the offseason. And they need to go ahead, because now you can't change the rules. You can't move the goalpost in season. They might potentially take a spot away from another team. See, if you've got enough, more 6-win teams than bowls available, then you start to get into some murky water there and changing the goalposts. So it probably does need to get changed. Again, Godspeed to them. We'll see what they get done. But for Liberty, bringing it back to the Flames and what they need, you're behind essentially Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State, and Western Kentucky. Those are the teams that matter. Western Kentucky's 5-1. Again, Jack State and Kennesaw State, one of them is going to lose this weekend. For Liberty, it's simple. You've got to win out. You've got to win out, and you've got to hope that you get some help. And maybe, just maybe, you can still backdoor your way into that conference title game. But at the least, you win 2 out of your last 3, you're in a bowl game. And I heard that from a lot of the players here this week. I think it matters to them.
There's certainly some pride there. I mean, I think Liberty is one of just a handful of teams. I think it's less than 10 that since kind of their FBS era, they've been in a bowl game. So it certainly does mean something. You can't look in the rearview mirror, right? Like the loss is the loss. You do have to move on. It'd be one thing if this team was 2-9, 2-10, but I mean, there certainly is still something to go out there and play for. If nothing else than your pride, your respect. But I mean, yeah, the bowl game, that is certainly an enticing thing. So it's good to hear the players are like, yeah, we are striving for this. This is our goal now. Not a completely defeated team or a team that's kind of thrown their hands up and been like, what do we have to play for?
Now, that said, you got an opponent this week that's in the same boat, and FIU is 4-5. They're coming off probably their best game of the year up to this point. I mean, they absolutely dismantled Middle Tennessee. Now, I get it; it's Middle Tennessee. They are not having the best of seasons at 1-8. Um, Again, you talk about where Liberty is, and we're sitting around here kind of disappointed in how this season's going. You think about a team like Middle Tennessee. You think about a team like Sam Houston. It's 1-8 seasons. Sam Houston, though, shout out to them. They got a big win at Oregon State this past weekend. Good for
That's
those
right.
guys. It could be a lot worse. But FIU, 56 points, a 56-30 win over Middle Tennessee. And their starting quarterback didn't play. The guy who was the preseason Conference USA Player of the Year, Kewan Jenkins, has been dealing with some injuries. I've read a groin injury. I've read bad ribs. He was questionable going into the game last week. Well, then all of a sudden you've got maybe one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league, Joe Pazansky, coming over from Holy Cross. All he does is go out and throw for 257 yards, 4 touchdowns, rushes for another, 61% completion. I mean, just an incredible game. And he's played in a lot of their games this year. A little more of a pocket presence, not as much the dual threat as a Jenkins is. But that's what they needed. Their vertical passing game, Pat, if you look back to Middle Tennessee, was as good or probably better than it's been all year. And it's going to give the Flames a whole lot to contend with.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing is, talking about Liberty, this team has struggled with some chunk plays allowed, especially in the passing game this year. And FIU, when they played Missouri State, I know we talked about, and I had the chance to kind of watch that game and break it down a little bit. They hit on several downfield shots. They hit on a couple two double move touchdowns. So it's a team that can certainly stretch the field. And when you've got a guy in there that navigates the pocket well, rather than their current injured starter, who he does a very good job just in a different way. He can get out of the pocket, keep plays alive, pull the thing down and run, beat you with his legs. This guy, he's not necessarily going to do that. His MO, stay in the pocket, deliver the shots downfield. But from, again, taking it back to Liberty's perspective, it's tough to game plan for that. We saw it with when Liberty played James Madison. One quarterback's a passer, one's a rusher. You've got to take time out of your week and incorporate into your game plan, planning for both guys, which gives you less time on task, less reps in practice of prepping for strictly a pocket passer or from a guy that likes to run outside the pocket. So Liberty's hands are going to be full for sure. It's just going to come down to who's playing quarterback or how frequently they're kind of mixing guys in there.
To me, it really sounds like listening to Coach Simmons this week. I think Pazansky's going to be the guy, and it's really hard not to figure them going with him and playing the proverbial hot hand right now, even with Jenkins' resume. But I mean, to your point, I mean, 7 explosive plays in the passing game, 7 plays of 15 or more yards. JoJo Stone was a real problem. He caught a touchdown, had a couple big receptions. Then you look at as well in the receiving core for them. Perry had 5 catches for 71 yards and a couple touchdowns, 8 targets for him, 9 targets for McNeil. Those are kind of the go-tos. But, I mean, this guy, he just spit it around the field. And the thing is, they're probably more of a run-first team. They averaged only 3.8 yards per carry, but Keyshawn Owens, their lead running back, ended up with a couple of touchdowns, 15 carries, 68 yards. That's a pretty good average. So I think if you're Liberty, you got to stop the run first. We talk about it all the time. Got to stop the run first and then see if maybe this defensive line that was getting home last week on Missouri State can do some of the same things here against FIU. I mean, it's a simple game, right? The keys just vary a little bit week to week. But I think for this week, you've got to be able to shut down the run and try to at least make them a little bit one-dimensional. And then I think where it varies a little bit, Pat, and I'll get your take on it too, is these corners for Liberty are going to be in some one-on-one situations with some dynamic receivers. And I think on both sides, it's going to be whoever can win more of those 50-50 one-on-one battles.
No, you're exactly right about that. It sounds corny, cliche. You've got to win first and second down. It's a lot easier on an offense and a lot more difficult on a defense and a defensive coordinator when you're dealing with a 3rd and 4 than when it's a 3rd and 10. third and 15. So if Liberty is able to put them into some predictable third down situations where you truly can disguise things, where you can mix a good amount of zone coverage in there so you're not having to fully worry about one-on-one on the perimeter or one-on-one a slot versus a safety, it's going to put you in a much better position. But again, my concern with this defense this year has been those chunk plays, which was an issue that we saw last year kind of rear its ugly head.
It's interesting. Both these teams, yeah, and the chunk plays, I think, could be a big difference because both these teams are really good in the red zone. I mean, these are two top 40 red zone defenses where it starts to get a little bit tighter, a little bit tougher to create a little separation, or if those run lanes start to close down a little bit quicker for the backs. Whoever wins that chunk play war, where you don't have to call as many plays in the red zone, you're just scoring on 50, 60-yard plays, might be able to win the football game. Defense for FIU, total defense not that great. Liberty's total defense, by the way, is leading Conference USA. I don't know if you knew that. The Flames have the best total defense in the league, giving up 360 yards a game. FIU, conversely, 107th in the country, giving up just over 409 yards per game. Passing attack, 120th in the country, pass defense, 120th for FIU, giving up almost 264 yards per game. So that to say, if there's a game for the Flames to kind of turn it around and get right, so to speak, maybe it's a Reese Smith. Maybe it's Dante Lee Jr. We've seen him do it. I mean, we saw some other guys get involved here this past week as well. Person caught a couple balls. Maybe this is a week where you can start to, kind of get things going there a little bit, or get back on track, I should say, with the passing attack.
Yeah, Nick, one thing that I did notice from that Missouri State game is they were able to use some misdirection or take advantage of FIU's just aggression and speed on defense. They ran a reverse that I think they took for like 65 yards. The receiver ended up fumbling at the end of the play. But I think there will be some opportunities for Liberty, whether it's potentially in the screen game, using misdirection to take advantage of some of this speed on FIU's defense. But the other thing I would say is, Missouri State ran for 206 yards, I think, against FIU. So, I mean, we've said before, that is Liberty's kind of winning formula, being able to establish the run, win that first and second down, take pressure off of Vasco so that he's got 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, and doesn't have 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, because we saw what that looked like at the end of the Missouri State game, and it wasn't pretty. So I think a key for Liberty really is going to be, again, it's easy to throw these out there, but if they can establish the run and put themselves in short yarded situations, it's going to go a long way for them. Man, Liberty needs this one.
Yeah, they do. Because the last thing you want to do is put your back against the wall, needing to win your last two games, going on the road at Louisiana Tech, although they have struggled lately, and then coming home against the Kennesaw State team that looks like they could potentially win the league. That's going to be a dynamite game, kind of getting away from this one a little bit, but looking ahead to this weekend, Kennesaw State and Jacksonville State, that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Two teams that can put up some points. They've shown the ability to do that.
And Nick, how absurd is it that a year ago was Kennesaw's first year stepping up to call it the big boys or with the big boys, and now, after losing their first two games of the year, and those losses are certainly understandable, they rattle off, 7 wins in a row, and they're 3.5-point favorites at Jacksonville State, last year's Conference USA champion. So it feels like the come up has been pretty quick.
And a couple of teams, too, that have played multiple quarterbacks. Kennesaw State's dealt with some injuries, as has Jacksonville State, and some ineffectiveness for Jack State at the position. Cam Cook going to probably still be the best player on the field for Jacksonville State this weekend. We'll see what Kennesaw's run defense does when tested here this weekend. Kennesaw State against the run, just okay this year in conference games. They're giving up about 145 yards a game. Not great, not terrible. You can probably inflate that by about 80 yards with what Cam Cook is going to be able to do out there. So can Kennesaw then at that point, can they be efficient enough on offense? Can they put up enough points to stay in that thing? But it's essentially, it's going to decide, it looks like right now, who's going to host that conference title game. Is it going to be played in Alabama, or is it going to be played in North Atlanta the first weekend in December? And then who's going to be the other team in there with them? So that'll be a lot of fun to watch coming up here this weekend as well. Flames are playing at Pit Bull Stadium, by the way. I think I mentioned that earlier. Pit Bull, for those of you that don't know, secular artist, rapper, producer. I don't know. There's a lot of titles that Mr. Bull has.
Mr. Bull.
He's from the Miami area. He bought the naming rights to the stadium last year, so I just think it's fun to say Pitbull Stadium.
People love it.
And that's what matters, He Miami-Dade native, taking some pride in his hometown team. What's your favorite Pitbull song?
I mean, I feel like the easy answer is Fireball. I mean, you could do a tie in there, like we're the Flames, so maybe they're just going to play songs for us coming onto the field. But I shamefully don't know that many Pitbull songs.
I don't either.
Hold your surprise. The audience, I'm sure, is shocked by that.
Timber was pretty good. Yeah, I like that
Fair.
one with Kesha. I don't know a whole lot of Pitbull. However, there's another Miami native, Flo Rida, and I have actually seen him in concert. True story.
Nick, this is the second year in a row where we've been able to drop some concert or what was the concert last year that we were talking about?
I can't remember. But you know what? This is their homecoming game. So I'm a little optimistic. Maybe they'll have some. I need to figure out what's FIU doing for halftime here at their homecoming game. Yeah, I doubt it's a Pitbull concert, but maybe, you never know. Maybe he makes a surprise appearance. Who knows?
I would say drop in from the rafters, but he'd be more likely
No
on a helicopter or something.
Outdoor stadium. Maybe
Exactly.
he comes in on a zip line from somewhere. They got some tall buildings around there. Maybe I don't know. Just throwing out ideas, FIU. We'll see. I'm gonna have to avoid the Cuban coffee this time. I was down there a couple of years ago.
Little cafecito.
Yeah, I went to a Cuban restaurant, authentic, great food with Jamie Hall, who's on our crew. And that stuff's like lighter fluid, man. Actually, I think the college game day crew, they went down to Miami for game day earlier this year, and they brought it to them on set, did they not? I think Nick Saban and Pat McAfee were sipping some of that.
That'll put some hair on your chest real fast.
If it's not already there, yeah. I'm going to have to avoid that on this trip. That will wrap it up for our show this week. Patrick, as always, appreciate the time, sir.
Always good to chat some football, even after a loss.
This has been Double Coverage on the Liberty Flames podcast, presented by Rogers Heating and Cooling, servicing Greater Lynchburg's HVAC and electrical needs. Schedule your service at callrogers.com. So long, everybody.
You've been listening to Double Coverage with Nick Pierce and Pat Kelly. Hit the subscribe button and listen each week to this and all podcasts on the Liberty Flames podcast channel from Van Wagner on the Liberty Flames Sports Network.